You are listening to the Money Hour at 11:50 a.m. KKNW, the Friday, February 19th virtual show. We are still temporarily moved virtually. You can listen to us also on podcast or on air on 11:50 a.m. KKNW on Saturday at 3 p.m. with a rebroadcast on Sunday at 8 a.m. I am your host, Tina Mitchell.
And I'm your co-host, Keelan Harvey.
We bring into studio each week the best of the best experts in our local money, everything that has to do with your money. We're here to help you in today's economy. And now in studio, we have Rosie Aiello of the Love is Kind Network. Stop People Pleasing, Please is our title for Rosie right here on 11:50 a.m. KKNW.
Well, Rosie, I think not everybody, but I think men and women can be guilty of people pleasing. And today we're referencing women. And as a well-mannered young man, I feel I don't want to reference women specifically. I get caught in these sometimes in these questions because I'm the guy here and I don't want it to be offensive. Why do women, do you think, people please?
Nice disclosure, Keelan.
You're right.
I'm trying my best.
And it's all okay. But I think women have a tendency to do it more. You know, the men can qualify on that. But, you know, it's like we end up trying to prove ourselves. And women are kind of groomed to be self-sacrificing, to give. And it just comes out, well, we have to just, you know, we have to prove ourselves. So instead of just being who we are, we go around proving ourselves. And when you do that, each time you give in, you're really giving up a part of you. So just think of that. Every time you give in to something and you kind of know it in your heart that it just doesn't feel right, but okay, I'll just do it. You're giving up. And every time you give up a part of you, you're covering up your authentic self. And slowly, layer after layer, your whole true self becomes buried.
Yes. And I always say you have to be your best self to be your best for others. And when you feel that you're renting out space, stop renting out your space and just live to be best for you. And then you can contribute to others. So I know that there is a lot of different types of abuse. One of them being financial abuse. Can you talk about that and what you've seen, Rosie, with financial abuse?
Yes, I really wanted to talk about this being on the Money Hour, right? For everybody to really be aware of this. So as a background, because I want people to understand, it really doesn't matter your education or how smart you are or whatever. I have an MBA in finance, but that did not prevent me from being in a very financially abusive relationship as well. So it was, and because I was people pleasing, right? I didn't have a voice. So it looked like he gave me a budget. So I couldn't spend what I wanted, just whatever he gave me. And that was just for the household. So there was a control there. I worked for him for many years. I was in the Middle East. I was working for him. I created all of his financials, the accounting, everything. I didn't get paid for years. And then out of the blue, he decides to pay me, give me, he decides what the salary is, which is okay. But then he decides what to do with my salary. So I never really saw it. Okay. Then I had owned a home. So please advise your buyers, right? I owned a home and we in the United States, because we were living overseas, I owned a home in my name in the United States. 3 days before and he coerced me to kind of, push me to sell it when I didn't really want to sell it, but I couldn't handle that. So he just pushed me. 3 days, he forced me into a quit claim deed. I mean, I can see right now at the table when the lawyer was there and not representing me. I mean, I knew him and I had to sign. So he took half the money and that was it. So this is a real common thing with women, and why women don't leave is also because of finances, because they're not working, because of they haven't been working. So financial abuse comes in lots of different, within the abuse, many, many ways. And I want the women to really be aware of that. And when they're writing up their contracts for homes.
Yeah. And even if not to that extreme of financial abuse, as a woman, you need to make sure, or a man, if the woman's in charge of the finances, it can go either way. You must know what's happening with your finances. You must have access, understand where the money's going and all of that. So yeah, great, Rosie.
Rosie, what are some of the mistakes that women make when they've experienced this, abuse and narcissism? What mistakes do they often make when they're looking for a new partner to share life with?
Yeah, thank you for that question because I think it's just, they first of all, they're in such trauma and then trying to get through that. But then because they're in that people pleasing thing, they're looking for Mr. Right. There's like, now I want to find Mr. Right, but they haven't really found their own right. Who am I? How do I show up? Do I love myself? Am I kind to myself? And this has been a big problem with women, is that they expect the other person to love them more than they love themselves. And that will never, ever work, and also they, they want to, they think they know why. It's like, oh, I'm tired of being lonely. I don't want to be lonely. And when you come from a position of feeling desperate, you can't seek the person that you really, that you deserve, right? And that kind of ties into the other one where, oh, I don't want to be anybody. I don't want to be with somebody who's controlling me or who's abusive or who's going to hurt me. So you look for people who don't do that instead of looking for people who are going to be kind to you, who are going to love you. You look for something that you want, not something you don't want, or you look for someone.
Yeah, and that's it's interestingly listening to you say that, because I talk a lot about affirmations, and you can't say what you don't want.
Mhm.
You say what you do want. I don't want to be late. I'm not going to be late. I'm not going to be late. The reason you're late is because you're saying I'm not going to be late. The brain doesn't understand the words. It only understands the emotion behind the words. So if you're voicing out what you don't want, the emotion is attached to what you don't want. You want your emotions and your excitement in your heart to be attached to what you're excited for coming up for you, right?
Absolutely.
So let's talk about the inspiration behind the name for your business, Love is Kind Network.
Well, it ties in. It's a great segue from what you just said. So when I was creating the company name, again, even though I work with women who have been in narcissistic or abusive toxic relationships, I didn't want that in the title. I didn't want that energy. I wanted, what is it that I want? What is it that women want? Again, looking for bringing in that energy. And so it was, well, real love is kind. And that's what I'm going to focus on. That's what I want the women to think about and focus on. So that's the whole thing. And it was kind of inspired by, excuse me, Mother Teresa. She said, something to the effect, if you invite me to an anti-war rally, I won't attend. If you invite me to a pro-peace rally, I will be there. It's the same thing what you were just saying before. It's what we want. Go for the energy and create that energy.
That's huge. What about when you mentioned and alluded to, like, blaming yourself, not feeling worthy. So what do women who blame themselves or feel some shame around some of this, how can they shift a little easier?
Yeah, it's really common, especially, any woman, but when you've been really successful and then all of a sudden, it's like, well, I tried to do that. I tried to meet his goals. I tried and nothing, everything failed. What's wrong with me? I should have gotten out early. I should have done this. And you hear abuse, and then you start abusing yourselves with all this self-criticism. And it's really to step back and really offer yourself some self-compassion, some self-kindness, to understand that you were probably in survival mode and you did the best you could. And beating yourself up is not going to help you at all. Just offer just some kind, gentle words. Hey, I did the best I could, and I'm on my road now to figuring it all out and getting support.
Yes. Yeah. Not beating yourself up, not wishing somebody would treat you better, not talking about what you don't want, instead focusing about what you are deserving to have and will have in the future. So I
Mhm.
would imagine, Rosie, the reason that people continue that are in these challenging spaces, their own challenging space, because that's really what it is. It's their space, their only control of their own space and their own beliefs of what they need to do to have a better life, is the repeating the process with the abusers, and not just in partnerships, but that ties into business. Is that why, or what's the other reason that this process continues to repeat over and over and over again?
Yeah, and I have a podcast, and I've interviewed many women who, their business partners, and they got into the people pleasing again. Is that just sucks you down? And so what happens is that women don't recognize what they're doing unless they start to do some really self-reflection, or they have some coaching to see outside what the patterns are, because your brain is going to dictate what it knows, right? You think you're making conscious decisions, but most of those decisions are on the subconscious level. And so the brain says, well, that seems really comfortable to me, what you're doing. So even for kindness was uncomfortable for me. I had to learn to be treated with kindness. So you start to look for, the red flags of a narcissistic relationship, and then you create healthy boundaries and you act upon them. And this is a process. They have to practice new beliefs. They have to understand their brain and how things are working.
Yeah, so true. And that's why the, affirmations are so important, because if you don't have positive conversations with yourself, you're only left to the intentional positive conversations. You're only left with the unintentional conversations that naturally you're having with yourself, which we know the majority of those are negative. Kaylin.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, I hate to say this, Rosie, because we could talk to you all day. We're out of time. But before we do that, a really good friend of mine talks about boundaries and how important that is. And he says that boundaries are about keeping things in, not keeping things out, which I thought is a really cool perspective. And you talk about boundaries as well. How do you define boundaries, and how can you set them up?
So for me, boundaries is all about honoring yourself. It's about, being, if your true authentic self is, how am I honoring myself? So if instead of thinking that boundaries are, putting a wall to protect yourself from others, again, it's the negative view of things. It's like, I deserve, this is how I want to be treated. And so if you're going to do this, this is what I'm going to do. And so the person is only responsible for honoring their own boundaries. They're the ones who have to say how it's going to be handled, not somebody else.
Yes, well said.